So, how been ya? Welcome to the Black Country Craftsman's YouTube channel. This video is part 7 of the house renovation playlist, where I've purchased a 2-bedroom house to renovate for the rental market. If you'd like to find out more advice on renting houses and the things to look out for before you buy one, check out my other video, the Buy to Let Guide. So let's crack on and pick up where we left off. If you remember, I'd assembled all the units by gluing and screwing them together. I'd fitted the centre cooker housing base unit, and I'd isolated the water supply from outside in readiness on fitting the corner unit and the sink base unit. Okay, I've put the doors on so we can find out the positioning of where we need to fit this post. Also as well, when this base unit is secured, it will also help us with the markings that we'll need to put at the back to allow the pipework to come through the base unit, the sink base unit. By holding the corner post in position with a 2mm gap for the door, put a line on the top metal strip using a set square from the back of the post. Then measure the depth of the sink base unit from the back to the edge of the unit, then mark it on the tape. Then, by putting the end of the tape to the wall, line the mark on the double base unit to the one on the tape. Then, where it's positioned, fit the double base unit to the wall. Okay, just to recap what we've done. So we've placed the door on there, left a 2mm gap there, placed the corner post just in position by hand, and then just marking it across there. Okay, now marking it across there, there's your base unit, and the point there where it's the front of your sink unit needs to come across to that point there. So by putting a line there, that's where you know that this point has to be positioned. So what we then did, we measured from there to the end of there. Okay, put the tape measure on the wall, and then measured where the line was, where the mark was on the tape. When we marked that, we positioned this base unit in that position. So it would be something like that. Okay, so again, by measuring that, transferring that mark onto, putting the tape there and lining this up where the mark is there, it enabled us to position and fix this unit to the wall. So next we need to set up to find out where we need to position the sink base unit. Before we do that, we need to fit the corner post in position using some L-shaped brackets and some small screws. And then fit the blanking panel that fits adjacent to the sink base unit. Place the sink base unit tight up to the post. Then, with the back tight up to the pipework, mark the back where you need to cut the holes for the pipes to come through. As you can see, I've just cut the waste pipe through, then pushed it back. Mark where you need to cut the hot and cold water pipes, and also underneath where the blue pipe has to come through the bottom. Also, you will have to measure from the wall where the blue mains water pipe comes out to, then mark the tape. Turn the base unit over, then placing a spirit level on the back of the unit, transfer the measurement from the tape to the base of the base unit, ready to cut a hole. Okay, now just to recap, we're at this stage where now that's screwed in position and the corner post is on. I've placed the sink unit in position. Obviously the pipework is pushed up right against the back, so we need to mark, I needed to mark out from that side where to drill the holes. Now obviously I've drilled the hole first, which then pushed the waste pipe through, so that went back a little bit further, that went a little bit further back. Try and get that in position. I've got that little bit further back, which then I needed to then mark the hot and the cold feed through to push them right the way through. Also as well, don't forget you've got the blue pipe. So what I did, I then measured from the back of the wall where the blue pipe needed to be situated, turn this unit over, and underneath I put a spirit level on the back of there and measured from the back point there to in the centre, or roughly where I'd mark that out where that needed to be. So when all the holes were drilled, we had something like that, both the waste and the cold and the hot feed coming through. So that was pushed back then into position, ready to fit. Fit a piece of wood to the back of the corner post, making sure the screws don't come through to the finished side of the post. Then fit the sink unit tight up to the post and fit it to the wall. By screwing it from the inside to the timber, I've put the screws next to the hinges, as when the door's fitted, they won't be seen. Always make sure it's level by adjusting the feet. Right, I really had to put a bit of work into this area here, as you normally do. You've got to try and make sure everything is level. If you look at the wall is out there, right in the corner. So consequently, I had two packers at the back of there, just to make sure that that part there was completely straight. Then you come to the corner, where, as you can see, the gap between there is slightly different to there. It narrows. That's because there's not a perfect right angle into that area there. You have to follow the wall line. You can't do everything perfectly square. What you need to achieve when you do the corner is that one there is perfectly square. And you can't do that unless this corner post is completely square. You look at the lines. Hopefully the lines are all a couple of mil. So it does take a lot of fiddling, adjusting the feet to try and make sure everything is all as level as it possibly can. Okay. What I did next, as you've already seen, is I then placed a piece of wood, screwed a piece of wood to the post, which then enabled me to connect the sink unit to the corner post. By putting the screws through the side of the unit, roughly where the hinges were, so they're hidden when the door goes on. I then attached this sink unit to the wall and in position. Obviously then, you know, the pipe work was all through and showing through. Again, when this is in all screwed together like this, get your spirit levels on there, that way, upright that way, upright that way. Make sure everything is as level as it possibly can be. Okay, I've extended the hot and cold feed to make it easier to work with. This pipe, additional pipe that I'll show you from the outside, I've put through the wall, is for an outside tap. Okay, what I've now done, just place the sink in position, obviously without the worktop. And if you can see through there, through the hole, I've put a little mark just where the taps will go. Now this is for lining the pipe work up as to where I need to put the connections for the taps. I've now marked the cold pipe in line with how far out I need to come in line with the stopcock below, which I've refitted back to the blue pipe with the original olive and nut backed up with some bonding compound. Okay, as we marked it there and cut it, which is roughly the distance away from where your main stopcock is. Okay, you've got a T-joint there. Well, first of all, you've got your supply from your stopcock and it tees off right and then tees off again, which goes back into the house. Then you come to the T at the end, which then goes up for the outside tap. And there you've got your drain off valve that fits in there. Then we go left and we do an elbow there. That's your washing machine connection and that's your connection for your tap. So yeah, there's your dry run. So we need to now look at start to soldering that up. As you've seen on one of my previous videos, how to solder. So yeah, I shall crack on with that. As you can see, it is quite tricky soldering these pipes all together. So I've done that connection there. I've now got all these cleaned and fluxed up, and I plan to do all of that section there. I'm having to prop up the drain off valve, as otherwise it would just completely drop off every time you try to solder it. So yeah, there's things you have to do to accomplish what you need to. With a low flame and a low heat, carefully heat everything up. Try to apply the solder. That's it, and when the solder starts to melt, you know you're hot enough. Moving this now over to this section, just so we can keep everything in a nice straight line, just to prop it up. Okay, we have now all our cold pipework all soldered up and connected to the mains. We'll need to do a connection there. Also as well, I've loosely put these on, we'll need to do a proper connection there and a proper connection there. So you'll just your washing machine outlet and your isolation valve ready for your taps. Also as well, I did forget to mention, when you solder these drain off valves, always remove the bottom section. The reason being is because you've got a lot of rubber inside, and the heat it generates when it's soldered will ruin those rubbers. So always take those out when you solder. Okay, next job will be the hot feed. something I forgot to mention was how I got the height of that isolator. So what I did, I've done a line there, roughly where that's the thickness of the worktop. So by placing the tap there, I've left plenty of room for it to slightly lift up a little bit and connect the taps to that. So that's how I've worked out the height for that. Now with the hot feed, what I've done, hot feed will slightly go the other side of that. So yeah, I've marked it there appropriately to cut, ready to do a dry run for the hot water pipe. Here is another way of soldering them up to save them dropping down. Again, it's a bit crude, but propping them up and soldering them on a flat surface. So basically I've done a dry run, and that's the end section where the taps will be. So I'll solder all that section, which will just leave me the one connection to put in when I solder it to the main pipework. Okay, slowly heat the pipework up. Get your solder. I'm not sure if you can see that on the video. You actually see the solder sucking up between the joints. I think that's called a capillary reaction. Same again on this side. Get it to a point where it's hot enough. And then apply the solder. Let that cool down. Solder that section to the hot feed at the back of the unit. Cut and solder the pipework outside, ready for an outside tap. Fit the tap connector to the wall to connect the pipe using some PTFE tape and bonding compound. I'll show you how to do this next with the same joints inside. Okay, all the pipe work has now been soldered, and we've got what we've got to do. We've got to put these compression joints on properly before we can turn the water on and test the pipe work. Now, underneath the threads, before I tighten the nut up, I always wrap round some PTFE tape and this compound it's designed for compression joints. So yeah, we'll get that done before we turn the water on. Clean the pipe up first with some wire wool. Place the nut on first, followed by the copper olive. Place the bonding compound all around the olive. Then follow by wrapping some PTFE tape over the olive. Place some mould grips on the valve and an adjustable spanner on the nut. Then tighten it up. Okay, I'll put some PTFE tape around the tap. That inside, you see me pressing it, that's a non-return valve. So that stops any outside water, if you leave the hose pipe on, from finding its way into the water system and contaminating it. When all the joints have been sorted and you're happy to test it with turning the water on, get someone outside to turn the water on. Make sure the stopcock is turned to the off position inside. Okay, with outside now switched on, get someone outside to switch it on for you while you're inside, and then slowly turn the water back on, checking for any leaks on any joints. Also as well, you've got your outside tap. Don't forget to check that. That all seems dry. Okay, all good. Okay, before we put the rest of the units in and continue on this side, what we need to do is we need to reinstall this, it's a condensing pipe that comes from the boiler. So we need to get this condensing pipe into the waste pipe there. Now I've already made a quick start on a little bit of a dry run with this little piece here. So what we need to do, we need to continue it the back of the plasterboard so it's all hidden, right the way down here and possibly across there and back into the base unit. So what we'll do first, we'll do a little bit of a dry run before we start to glue any joints up at all. Okay, using my multi-tool, I've cut out the section to hide the condensing piping. Now I've come across a little bit of a dabbed area there. Now if you can see, there's a socket there where you can see you've got a metal plate there, which is probably the electric cable underneath there. Also as well, what you've got to be really careful of is a gas pipe. Now the back of the plasterboard, the gas pipe is concealed in this adhesive, and there's a reason for that. The reasoning behind it is that it protects the pipe. If ever there's a leak in the pipe, it's concealed because it's covered, it's completely covered in the adhesive. Now if the gas pipe was just the back of the wall and not covered in the adhesive, basically the gas could then leak all the back of the plasterboard and create trapped gas that could ignite and cause an explosion. So it's the regs over in England that all gas pipes are covered in the adhesive when you put the plasterboard onto the wall. Now I'm not saying there's a gas pipe in there, but just to make you aware that you could come across something like that and there is a gas pipe concealed in there. So be very careful when you're chipping anything like this out around by where you're the boiler and where you've got the gas pipe. So be very, very careful of that. Okay, when you start to cut these down to length and you're ready, you've done a dry run and you are ready to glue them. Okay, a little bit of sandpaper, just clean around the edges. What we use is this solvent glue. Okay, because these are a solvent weld jointed system. So you put your paste all the way around. You then get your connector and quite simply your elbow, and then you simply pop it in, wipe the excess off around the edges and literally wait for it to set. Now this literally does set in less than a minute. So once you put the glue on, you've got to be very quick to get your parts in place and glued up. Okay, there we have it. The overflow pipe is all glued up now and fitted and sunk into the wall, and that's ready to be plastered. Comes along here and down into the waste. I fitted the old waste just temporarily, just so I can test it, as before we fill we need to have the boiler running and we need to test that pipe just to make sure all the joints have got no leaks. So yeah, let's see how we go. We have the boiler running pipe has now been tested and I've started to plaster patch it and fill it in. Okay, as we come to a close with the plumbing and we move back on to fitting the kitchen, obviously I just wanted to quick point out that I chose to solder all these joints. Bit old school, I think it's the best way, but it's not always the quickest. There are other methods you can use. These are a typical push fit where literally all you do is literally push it on and it sticks, it grabs it quite solidly, very good. To release them, just push that at the top, and that does release quite quickly using two hands, of course. The other one is what these are. I think these are a tech type make, where literally you've got your grab rings in there with a rubber seal. These literally push onto the pipe. Now as soon as these push on, you won't be able to get them off, a bit like the soldering joint. Again, I've used those in the past, very good. So if soldering's not for you, there are other ways of getting around the plumbing. Okay, now we move on to this corner. Exactly the same process of installing that one as it will be for this one. Getting everything level, fitting the corner one first, the big one, then getting the corner post set up. Yeah, putting your drawers on, making sure everything's all in line. Yeah, and we'll see how we get on with that. Okay, corner units are now fitted in with the post. Again, I've got to pack out backs of the wall to make sure that we're all in line that way. Same with the back of this one. As you can see, wall's slightly out, but don't worry, there's going to be a filler piece in there, a filler panel. So hopefully we'll lose that with a filler panel. And again, your margins on your doors in the with the corner post, everything's all the right gaps. Okay, we now have all the base units fitted. This space here is for a washing machine, and a washing machine is normally around 600, the space that they normally leave. I always leave a little bit extra. I always leave about 615. What we had to do, we had to fit this end panel first, so the end panel fits fairly flush with the door. As we had to pack it out, there is still a little bit of a gap at the back. It's not a problem, we will be able to seal that as and when. So put that panel in. You then measure 615 from there to there, which is where another end panel will have to go. And then I've attached the base unit. We're marking it there with the end panel. And I've fitted that base unit in there. I'm not going to fit that end panel yet, as this is a drawer unit, base unit. So we'll have to fit the drawers first, just so we can get a precise measurement as where we need to finish the panel regarding the end, because the end is the most important, and basically that's what you'll see. Okay, the drawers are now being fitted. And as a result, me fitting the doors, I've now been able to fit this end panel. So the only thing we've got left with the base units to sort is the end panel there, which has kind of got a little bit of a curve on, similar to that side there, which then we'll finish off with the filler pieces in between the cooker housing, and the bottom drawer also needs fitting, and the cooker housing support for the cooker. And that's the bottom part finished really, and we're ready when the two end panels are fitted to look at possibly fitting the worktop. Now you need to take the measurements in readiness to cut some sections out to fit as blanking. Okay, we need to look at putting two filler pieces in between this cooker housing unit. Quite simply, get your nice steel rule, measure the top, which is 77mm. Same down the bottom, 77mm, so that's nice and square. Measure the height and cut yourself a section of there out of one of your panels. All marked up and ready to cut. Now I always cut these sections out by hand using a panel saw. So what I've done with this, I've got an end panel, lent it up against the unit and marked it at the bottom and marked it at the top. So I've got the height for the marking for the height there. What I then do, I've marked it 77mm. Now what I've used is a tool that I've had since I was an apprentice, which is a marking gauge, which is there's like a little bit of a pin there. Basically get your mark there, and then basically you run that down and it puts a nice groove, which is your marker for you to cut. Okay, that one has now been cut and fixed with screws through the side. Always cut and fit one and not both of them. Don't cut both of them, or measure up and cut both of them, purely because if you're slightly out when you're cutting this one and you slightly move that over a touch, either at the top or at the bottom, whatever you've cut might not work and might not fit. So always cut and fit one, and then now we come to measure the other one, and we'll do the same, measure, cut and fit. Both filler pieces have now been fitted, and that completes the fitting of all the base units. Please join me in the next episode where I will continue with fitting the kitchen. The next task will be marking out and fitting all the wall units. Okay, if you've enjoyed this video, smash us a like, drop us a comment, and if we can help you, we will. And please subscribe to give us a little support. Also, please check out our other videos, as we've got quite a few out now. You may find something that might just help you out in the future. I'm the Black Country Craftsman. Don't forget to tell your muckers. Learning how to fix these problems yourself is cheaper than paying someone else to do it for you. Thanks for watching.